And we are recording and we are live. I'm John Mercer, president of the Las Vegas Triathlon Club, and we are here to do a Las Vegas Triathlon Club member spotlight. And I am really excited to talk with Kim Jefferson, who has been a real great inspiration for a lot of triathletes, and is, I find her very parallel with me, is that we're masters athletes, and it's still sort of fun to make the kids work hard in triathlon. And so it's really going to be a pleasure to talk with you tonight. I've got Bob Gamble, ambassador for the Las Vegas Triathlon Club. Hey, Bob, how's it going?
Hey, hello, hello, hello.
Awesome. So we're gonna get to know Kim a little bit more tonight, and I'm gonna turn the mic over to Bob to give an introduction for Kim.
Well, hello, everybody. Glad to have you with us tonight, and it's really cool to have Kim with us tonight. I don't know if you realize it, but our club has over 250 members, and something I found out about doing these member spotlights and talking to people, everybody has an interesting story. It's crazy. It doesn't matter who you are, you come from some interesting places, and Kim is no exception. Just talking to her a little bit before we started this, Kim recently retired as a teacher. She was in the noble profession, bringing up our kids, and she was a teacher for 28 years, and just earned a hard-earned retirement where she's taking it easy now. But she's still training pretty hard, because if you look at her times, of course, Kim won the Masters. See, that's the reason we're interviewing her tonight. She won the females Masters division, and she crushed it. I mean, she was first place in the aqua bike, first place in the triathlon. And when I first looked at her time in the triathlon, I thought it was the aqua bike because it was so fast. It was like an hour and 27 minutes. So she is definitely pushing the kids. And so we're here tonight. We're going to meet Kim, talk to her a little bit, talk to her about why she's so fast, what she thought of her season last year. What's really interesting about Kim, too, is that she's been with the club for a while. And she actually won the first overall club race back in 2010 or so as an open competitor. So Kim, it's wonderful to have you here tonight. So you went from winning the overall competitor, now you won your Masters in your first time. You crushed that. So welcome, and tell us a little bit about that season last year.
Well, thanks for having me, first off. And yeah, my season was okay last year. I was happy with it overall, given what I trained. And the club series is always fun. It's hard. Sprints, I find, sometimes are the hardest distance of all, because you have to go so hard the whole time. And I did truly enjoy the aqua bike probably the most. And I can see that in my future, being a person who's had a lot of knee injuries from running for so many years.
Yeah, and me and my third surgery that I just had on my knee, I'm wishing we had a few more aqua bikes myself. So maybe we're 2 against 1 here. We can talk John into it. But
yeah, I'm starting to look at different races just for aqua bike options, just because I can't train enough to do the run like I would like to. So I'll
tell you about that. There is a wonderful HITS long course 70.3 aqua bike version in Palm Springs. That's wonderful. So I did that last year. So I'll talk to you about that. You're actually a very fast runner. You're saying you're not. I mean, you're turning in 25 minutes 5Ks after the bike and the run. So is that how you got started in the sport? Were you a runner in high school?
Yes, I was. I came from a small high school, so pretty much if you played one sport, you played them all, and which I did. But track was my favorite, and so I did run. But the longest I ever ran in high school was the half mile, or the 800 meters. But when I went to college, I started running just for fitness, and I decided to enter a 5K just on a whim, and I did. And I just fell in love with doing that. So I ran probably from road races from 1984 until maybe the mid 90s with nothing but road races. That was it.
There's a whole lot of millennials right now are just like, they're grinning that you were crushing races before they were born. That's fun. And you're still fast. That's fun. But when you've been with the Tri Club for a long time too. When did you join?
I think I don't know the exact year, but I think it was in the mid 90s. I know the club president at the time was, it was two presidents together, Teresa and Joe Terlizzi. And it was a very low-key thing, and we did duathlons at the time. Whether it wasn't feasible to get permits for the lake or just the logistics didn't work out, I'm not sure, but we did a lot of duathlons.
I kind of enjoyed those myself. We were in Phoenix doing these. At the time, it was so long ago, we called them they were called biathlons. So, but have you done other race distances besides the sprints? What have you done?
Oh yes, I've done sprint, Olympic, half, and full. And I started out with the sprint and Olympic at first, and mainly because I couldn't do enough training to do the longer stuff. I had two little kids at home and work full time, and husband and I had opposite schedules. It was hard to maneuver much training time. So I made the most of what I could and just did the sprint and Olympics for the first few years.
Will you be doing long course again now that you're retired and you can train all day long?
I have done some since I retired. I did a full last year. And actually I enjoyed the training for a full or a half way more. I'm not real happy doing real intense work anymore. So the long stuff that I just have to put the time in the saddle, and long swims are great. Long run, that hurts me, but I do what I can.
And if you don't mind, one more follow-up question on that. Well, since you've done a lot of training, you've done the long races, and you know, how is your injury history? And this is always first and foremost in my mind, because I think I am better at anyone in the club at getting hurt. So it's like I'm trying to lose that title. Well, tell me about your training and staying injury free.
Well, I haven't really stayed injury free the whole time. I had my first knee ACL reconstruction in 2008, and it was basically from running for so long, and I had some previous injuries when I was in high school and beyond from playing basketball and things like that. So I had basically missing anterior cruciate ligament in both knees. And so the first reconstruction was in 2008. Then I think it was 2017, I crashed my bike during a race and I severed one of my rotator cuffs. And so I had to have that surgically reattached. But right before I did that, I ended up having knee problems with the other knee. So I had to have another ACL reconstruction on that one. So 2017 was pretty tough as far as injuries go. I went 9-10 months without swimming. And, but once I got to get going again, then it all fell back into place.
So and you just have to come back and win the Masters title.
Yeah.
So I wanted to jump in. Which full did you do?
Last year I did the one in Napa Valley, the HIT series.
Yep.
In Napa Valley.
That's great.
Yeah, it was extremely cold swim, and which, you know, at least the first club race was nice. It was because it was in, I believe, in March, and it was really cold, and so yeah, that got me a little bit used to it. That helped.
That was a cold day, cold water and cold day too.
I was really, really happy to get out of the water at that race.
It was good practice. That's awesome.
Yes.
Well, I'm gonna back up, and Bob, maybe you're getting to this, but I want to hear about your first triathlon.
Well, my first try, I looked that up today, and my first one was I think in '99, and it was in California, in San Dimas at Benelli Park, and it was an all women's.
Oh, how cool.
And it was an odd distance, maybe like 500-yard swim, 14 on the bike and a short run. It wasn't quite a 5K.
Oh.
And it was fun. I was hooked. And so I did later that same year, a couple months later, I did I think it might've been the very first Las Vegas triathlon.
Oh, okay.
And here's an interesting thing about that one. The transition area, when I did that first one, was in the parking lot right up by the ranger station. So
Oh, that's a long transition.
Well, no, I mean, it wasn't a long transition run because the water was that high.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of a run, but not what you're thinking.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. So what made you do that first triathlon? I mean, what drew you to that?
Well, I started swimming because my knees bothered me a lot from too much running. I had a running friend of mine, gave me her 1985 steel bike, and I just thought, okay, well, I have all the toys now. Let's put it to use. So I tried to find a ladies triathlon to do because I was very intimidated, and I'm not a big fan of open water swimming. So I thought that was a better choice for me to start.
Oh, that's so cool. That's interesting that when you said it was an all women's triathlon back then, I don't really think there was much of an initiative at all to do all women. So that's awesome that you had that available.
Yeah, I think maybe in California, I think they were doing more there than here. So
Mm-hmm.
I think the Las Vegas Tri was the only one that was offered at the time.
Oh, okay.
At least for a few years.
Yeah, and then there was the women's Tri here down at Lake Las Vegas a couple of times. Was it
the Iron
Eureka?
Girl? No,
Iron Girl. That's right. It was Iron Girl.
Yeah,
that's right.
I really like that one too.
Yeah, no, that was good. That was a hard course.
Yeah, it was. A lot of, some people coming in from other places were not ready for those hills. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of hills, have you done the Pumpkin Man? Any of the distances?
I've done the sprint and Olympic for Pumpkin Man. Mm-hmm. And even the first Pumpkin Man, I think I did, and it was out at Lake Las Vegas. So
really?
It didn't finish in Boulder City, the very first one.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
And what is your favorite distance? Do you like doing the sprints, or would you rather do something longer?
Right now, I prefer the longer ones. I guess I'm not as competitive as I used to be. I used to be super, super competitive, and it was, win at all cost and, put everything out on the line. And I'm kind of over that now. And so I like the long stuff, mainly because I really like the long training.
Yeah. I remember reading an article in Runner's World magazine that talked about the progression from beginner to novice to competitor to, and I forget all what, and in the end, like the I guess what you call it, the self-actuated runner was the one who just enjoys the training, enjoys the running, and it sounds like that's where you've hit on triathlon.
That's where I am now. I could ride my bike every day and be happy. And same thing with swimming. Same thing with swimming.
Yeah, very good.
So then, all right, so you talk about being competitive, and I know maybe it gets a little bit less as we go further on, but that's probably still in your blood. So I'm interested to hear a little bit about your race tactics, maybe as a masters athlete, because the masters athletes, it's competitive, and even now, I mean, you're top 4, top 5 in our races, and that's really impressive. So when you're towing the start line, before you go in the water, what are you thinking about, and how do you approach the swim, and then getting onto the bike?
Well, when I'm standing in the water getting ready to go, I'm wondering most times, why am I here? Why am I doing this? And then once I start swimming and I start, get 100 yards out and I feel comfortable, then it's like, okay, now I can get going. And you know, in the club races especially, I try to swim fairly hard because it's a short swim for me.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing with the bike. I get on the bike and I just try to ride as hard as I can,
Mm-hmm.
because I know it's a shorter race relative to other ones. And like I said before, I don't run like I used to, so I need to try to push hard so I can just hang on as best as I can on the run.
Oh, you still do pretty good on the run, though. I agree with Bob. That's still pretty impressive. So,
Well, thank you very much.
wow.
It's you know, it's not easy getting past now when I used to be the one passing other people.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's just getting used to that, and I'm fine with it, because they're really, I think to myself, wow, that was me 20 years ago. And that's a pretty.
So that is interesting, because that is a mind shift that we have to make as athletes. So, you know, how do you find yourself? You know, you talk about being less competitive, or, you know, before, win at all costs. How do you approach the run now when people pass you? Because I know I'm in the same boat. I mean, now you're starting to get caught, and it's different. So how do you, what's your approach to the run then?
Well, I try not to go out too hard anymore. I used to go out just really hard from the get-go, and I can't do that anymore, especially with if we're talking about the club races with that uphill. I've never been a great uphill runner, so I just bide my time till I get to the flatter parts, and then I try to pick it up, turn around, and then pick it up again to get back to the finish. That's and in the longer events, I don't know, I think sometimes that's just a war of attrition between athletes to see who can last out there the longest.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so having done races for this period of time, how has your equipment changed?
Well, like I said, I started on a bike that was given to me. It was a steel bike and real heavy. It had the shifters down on the down tube.
Oh,
and yeah, and it was a little bit small for me. So I had to get a stem extension on it and just a couple different tweaks. I did not have clip-ins for the longest time because I was afraid I was going to fall over, which of course, when I got clip-ins, I did in my driveway several times.
Yeah.
And other than that, I rode that bike for quite a few years. And then my husband found a carbon bike for me. It was a road bike, but we just put some clip-ons on it, and that worked really good. I mean, to this day, I've had my fastest bike split on an Olympic on that bike, even faster than my tri bike.
That's so cool.
And it wasn't that easy of a course either. So
there's a lot of people out there with road bikes right now that are running that are really glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Yes, that's good. I mean, I still have both of those bikes. The old 85 bike, that one actually is back in Iowa with my family back there. So I have a bike to ride when I go visit them.
That's
and
great.
Yeah, my first, my other one is on my trainer. My tri bike is in my garage now, and I like my tri bike. It's very, very comfortable. And other than that, as far as equipment goes, just upgraded wetsuits. Like that. When my others get holes in them, then I have to get a new one.
Yeah.
And you said you don't have a swimming background. How did you learn how to swim? Did you have a coach?
Actually, yeah. One of my running friends, she was a good swimmer. And so when I was having difficulties running for a while, she goes, well, let's go to the pool. And so, she took me there, and I had just the very basics on swimming. I mean, I started with just a lot of kicking and doing 25s and breathing so hard at the end of a 25 that I didn't think I was going to get back to the other end of the pool. So I did that. The only coaching I ever had was I worked out with Teresa Terlizzi, who has an excellent swim background and coaching background in swimming. And we used to go a couple times a week to a pool. And at those times, I thought swimming 1,500 meters was a long ways. So anyway, I guess I took to the water okay as far as freestyle goes. I can't do the other strokes, but I can freestyle.
I was going to ask you what your what strength you have, which one of the legs is your strength, but they're all really strong. So which one's your favorite? Which one's your favorite?
My favorite now is the bike. That used to be it was my weakest, and I didn't like it as much, but now I love it. And I can't say it's my strongest, because I still get passed on the bike.
Oh, come on. You did a couple of 40-minute, 12 miles.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not slow.
Yeah. Those girls who pass me, I'm not sure of their names right off the top of my head now, but they just go flying by me. It's a good thing I can get out of the water first.
Yeah. And what was it that improved your biking for you?
I think it was just time in the saddle, just being able to ride longer, comfortably. So I guess, I did have to experiment with different seats to get a seat that was really comfortable. It was nice when they came out with women's specific seats, and that helped a lot. Bike fit, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Now you say you're gravitating towards the longer distances. So you've done at least one full. Have you done?
I've done three. I've done three fulls. My first one I did for my 50th birthday. I did Vineman before they switched it, before they sold it to Ironman. So
that's great.
I'm really glad I did that there.
Yeah. The roads aren't great, but it's a great course. It's a little bumpy, but what a beautiful area to do a race.
It's absolutely beautiful. Actually, I think the one I did last year in Napa Valley, it's that one's the bike was actually bumpier. That was a very hard bike.
Yeah,
I was pretty tired when I got off the bike, and I was wondering how I was going to make the marathon. So.
Yeah, and then what would be your third one?
I did a little known one up in northern Utah, up in Garden City, Bear Lake Brawl.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you swim in Bear Lake. And then you went for the bike. You bike around the lake.
Oh,
it's a two loop bike around the lake. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
It was very, very fun. That one might actually be my favorite one.
Oh,
is that still going on? Do you know?
I believe it is. Yes. I think the race company that does that is called On Hill Events.
It's called what?
On Hill Events.
Okay.
And they do a lot of running, 5K, 10Ks, and a few triathlons.
Now, one thing that I'm shifting gears here a little bit. One thing that I'm interested in, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people are. As much as you know now about triathlons, what is it that you can share that you think that can help people? Because there's no doubt that with your speed now that you've learned quite a bit.
Well, I think
training wise.
Oh, well, as far as training goes, definitely don't skip your brick workouts. Those, it doesn't matter what distance you do. If you can get off your bike and run, you'll feel better, you'll do better. And probably the other thing, the longer your race is, you have to really dial in your nutrition during the race.
Right.
I learned the hard way a few times on that. I was reduced to walking with 1.5 miles to go. In a half, I physically couldn't run because I had too much cramping going on. It was the most miserable 1.5 miles in my life.
That's so hard.
Yeah, and I can see that. And I've
never made that mistake again, though. So I learned from it.
And what did you do to correct that? What did you eat?
Taking electrolytes. I never really took electrolytes before that. And I just relied on sports drinks, things like that. And it just wasn't enough because it was a warm race. And so then I started taking Endurolytes, and that seems to have cured the problem.
Is there anything you'd like to share with the club as far as things that you aha moments or things that impressed you about the club or anything?
Oh, I think anybody, it doesn't matter whether you're starting out or if you've been around forever like I have been, I think doing the club events are so beneficial. It keeps you kind of tuned up, so to speak, in between other races that you do. And a lot of people, I'm afraid, I hate to say, they seem to think they don't want to do sprints anymore once they've graduated to Olympic, or especially if they go to long course, then they'll never do a sprint again. And I think they're making a mistake, because I think if you switch up your distances, and whether it's training or racing, I think if you switch things up, you're going to be better, because you're going to activate those muscles differently. Because if you train slow all the time, then you're going to race slow all the time.
Yeah, good point.
Oh, that's excellent. And yeah, I think I think you're spot on. I think the sprints it's a great way to practice different parts of a race, on top of getting a good workout on that day. And then, taking what you can learn there and applying it to the longer distance.
It is. It's a good venue to practice your transitions, especially if you're like me and don't practice them at home, because I've never done that. I just don't like doing that. So yeah. And so if you look at other things, you'll see I also have usually the slower transition times too. Because I can't get out of my wetsuit. I just can't get out of that thing.
Well, I always say being deliberate in transition. So, that I think that's, taking your time and getting set up correctly is good. Okay. So 2020 is pretty much a wash, right? I don't know if you have any races left on your calendar 2020, but what's 2021 looking like?
Well, I'm not really sure. Like for this year, I only had one out of town race planned to do, and that's not until the end of October. So I'm not counting on it, but if it happens, it happens. I'm still training for it, because it kind of gives me some rhyme or reason to what I'm doing when I get up and work out. And if I don't do that one this year, I'll do it next year. I'm not really sure for next year. I don't tend to plan that far ahead, not anymore, I should say, as far as triathlons go. And it kind of makes a difference. It depends on what my training friends, what they're willing to do. Because anymore now, for maybe the last 5 or 6 years, then usually the out of town races, it's pretty much a girls' week. Well, no, I can't say that. Yeah, it's a girls' weekend away, but sometimes with significant others, sometimes not.
Now, has that changed over the years, where you've become more sort of laid back with planning for events?
Yeah, I used to plan out the whole year. I used and I'd even throw some running races in there. I would plan everything out, and not so much anymore.
Well, but that's what I'm really hearing, though, is you just enjoy it, and there's a space for that. And I think far too often people forget that it's fun.
Yeah, and that's the main thing, because I don't want to make it so that it's too much work and not fun anymore, because then I won't do it.
Right.
So I do.
That's wisdom for you.
Yeah, I make it fun, and like I say, I try to put a weekend getaway in there if I can. And it used to be just a lot of times the family would go, and my kids would watch me race, and my husband and kids would watch, and sometimes we would camp even. So now it graduated to going with just adults.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that's fantastic. And it is really neat to chat with you, learn more about your triathlon career and where you've been. It's, again, congratulations on being the female Masters Point Series winner. That is really, something that I hold at a high esteem, because we're still doing it. We're still engaged with the sport, enjoying it, and you're still pushing these kids around. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun to make them work and catch me on the run.
That's right. That's pride right there. That's good. And it's neat that you've had the history of doing it back in the late 90s, and you've have some great advice to be able to give to these new triathletes and to help them up.
Yeah. Thank you so much for talking to us. This has been actually very interesting. So it's been quite a pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
And now I will watch for your, oh, I'm going to get it wrong. It's not the Buckeyes, it's the
The Hawkeyes.
The Razorbacks, right?
Hawkeyes.
Hawkeye. We're going to watch for that jersey now. I'm just giving you a hard
Yes.
time. Yeah. That's great. Well, thanks so much, Kim, for joining us. This is really a pleasure to chat with you.
Thanks. Good to be here.
All right, I'm going to stop the live, and I will stop the